Whoa. Whoops. I don't know where that's coming out
And
of, but
intro sound.
it's coming out of my computer speakers. That's rad. It's
That's okay. I couldn't even hear the intro sound, so that's fine.
cool.
Mixing
I
it up
think
a little bit.
it didn't go out live, but we'll put it back in when it comes to the podcast. Whatevs.
Yeah,
This
whatevs,
it's
whatevs.
stuff, people.
Hey guys, welcome back to Testing Normal. We're on episode 106, I do believe.
106.
Is
Yeah,
that right?
dude. 106.
Fantastic.
It's pretty crazy,
Fantastic.
isn't it?
That's a pretty good number. I like
Yes,
106.
I do too.
It's I like the way it divides. Divides well.
It's even.
Even. Yep. I don't really have much else correlating with 106, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's your lucky number.
Yeah,
You ever wonder
everybody
about
knows
that?
my
Like,
lucky number is
it's
106.
like when people pick a lucky number, it's always like a single digit number, or it's always like probably like under 20. All the other numbers are left out. Like nobody picks 3 billion.
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't feel like anybody picks like a really like. Some people might pick pi, I guess, right?
True, but that's like an ever evolving number. Like it's
Right.
we're still finding digits of pi.
Which is absurd, but
Yeah,
yes, amazing,
but there's always
amazing.
Pi Day to celebrate.
That's right. That's right, dude. We got so many good, juicy things to talk about this week. I'm
We
excited.
do, and it's been a couple weeks. We'll start off with the heat wave that smacked us was insane. I know that some of you guys went through it.
Oh,
Um, there was no way that we were gonna like record during those days because number one, I have an air conditioner that barely blows on me. Some of you might be able to hear it, and Curtis has none. Where he's sitting right now, he should probably invest in something like that, or just run a pipe from his in air
not in
up
my
there.
loft. Yeah. Yep.
Um, we would have just
Shit.
died, and we've almost died in like 80-degree weather, or Curtis has. So it wasn't gonna happen. And then what happened the next? I think like all my family was here, and it was just like, you
And
know
then I
what?
had some people visiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just we're like, you know what? We're our own bosses. This doesn't bring a
Yeah.
ton of money in, and
Yeah.
so
We do us. We do us.
we do us. But we're happy to be back with you guys, and we love to have these conversations.
Very
We
happy.
have them regardless if you guys are here, usually via text, and we argue a
Usually.
lot, and then we laugh at ourselves and
Yeah.
each
And
other.
then we went mountain
And
biking.
it's great. And then we went mountain biking, and it was great. If you guys want to know, Silver Falls has some really cool mountain biking trails. They're not, I wouldn't consider technical, but they're good for people that don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, and they actually are exciting enough where you can have some fun cornering, and there's a couple little tiny jumps. You definitely don't have to hit them.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
but
you could skip them.
they're like enjoyable for a novice, and even
Yes.
somebody that's intermediate or higher. You can definitely have fun with the hills and the cornering and whipping around the corners. Beautiful sights and views too, and it's like what $3 or $5 for a day pass, so it's a
Right.
pretty cheap day of entertainment. Hit it up, guys. Recommend it.
Yes. Super fun.
Okay, so we got a couple different wide ranging of topics. I think my topics are probably a little bit more wide than yours as far as randomness. Um,
Yeah, I gotta be
but
honest. Like some of mine, I like. I don't even care if we do or don't talk about them. There's a couple things that I think are interesting, but you know,
yeah, we'll just see where the day takes us. Um,
yeah, there's a couple weird things that have happened since we. So we
well,
kind of touched on the John McAfee thing, but a little few things have developed since then. And
right.
looking through
We need
yours,
to go into more detail. We need
there's
to
a
go into more
couple of.
detail with that.
We had a
Well, first of
Haitian
all,
assassination.
a
I mean,
Haitian
guys, what is
assassination.
going on in this world? Yeah,
It's terrible.
I didn't
It's so
mean to make
sad.
that rhyme.
Um, so a little bit of the drama associated with the Haitian assassination. That
Yes.
rhyme is fantastic, by the way. Um, is right now there's some drama within Haiti because several of the accused assassins that were arrested have direct ties and correlations with DEA and FBI informants. Um,
It's good. Always good.
Meaning that they're not technically like DEA, trained employees or citizens of the United States, right? But they are informants that have worked with and through the FBI on several occasions. So it doesn't look great when you have these individuals storming the president's house, yelling DEA, DEA, and then going in and shooting the president. Um,
Correct. What is
and then
interesting
also
too,
having direct correlation to the DEA.
I would say, and these days it's good to point out, is that this is not like Fox News saying this or Alex Jones at InfoWars or something like that. This is a CNN article that's
Yeah.
talking about that. Um, so
Yeah. So
typically they wouldn't want to say that if they didn't have to, but that's what it looks like.
yeah.
So
I mean, I think it's great to see kind of a nonpartisan like saying, "Hey, this is what they're saying," whether or not, you
I
know.
wouldn't call CNN nonpartisan per se,
No,
but
this
I would say,
article,
but there's certain things that
this
if they
article,
say them, I'm like, oh, that's that's got some heavy weight to it if they're actually reporting it. You know what I
right?
mean? Like,
Yeah, it's
it's
very
probably,
interesting.
I would say, if I was looking at this and I know nothing about it, that if they're reporting on this, it's probably worse than what it says on this article. Like,
Well,
it's probably much more involved than just this because they're having to talk about
and how? Well, of course, though, it has to be more involved in this because it's like it was an assassination of of a sitting president of a
it. Yeah,
country. So like, there's
and
definitely more than what we're being told.
they've had some unrest for a while, but still, yeah, it is a big deal. But I haven't been there. That's where I was gonna go. My dad immediately texted me and said, "So do you still think that Haiti is safe?" And I said, "I maybe you misunderstood me. I never said I thought it was safe. I just had confidence I'd be okay."
Yeah, and you weren't like probably planning on getting involved with those parties, anyways.
I wasn't.
Like,
I wasn't. I wasn't gonna hang out in Port-au-Prince and like go around, maskless,
talking with
waving a knife or anything. Like
if anybody knew any like connections to the seedy underworld.
yeah,
Like
you
anybody got
guys,
any connections? We can hang
yeah,
out, maybe talk about DEA opportunities. Just wondering if anybody's interested. Probably
yeah.
not. Probably not.
Yeah. So, and I
So
don't know
that's kind of.
I don't know anything about the Haitian government I don't know any of that. So maybe this dude, maybe he wasn't a great guy. It doesn't mean I think he should get assassinated or anything.
I did listen
It's
to an
just
interesting
I don't know. I mean, like when we've had some presidential attempted assassinations, probably more than we've ever heard of, and some that actually did
successful.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's still like what happened? Like we don't, the JFK thing, nobody knows. I mean, somebody does, but
Yeah.
those of
Well,
us in peons
speaking of
don't.
presidents, one thing that I am actually really stoked about that Biden just signed
Mhm.
into act is this order of protecting farmers. It's not just farmers; it extends actually to motor vehicles as
Yeah, so I
well.
saw this. What exactly
Yes, it's
is
a
being
big
said?
deal right now. So lately, and over the past several years, Jordan and I actually both used to work on a farm.
Dude,
Um,
it's like one of my favorite jobs.
yeah,
Worst paying
it
job,
was
but
our worst paying job, and we spent the most hours on it, but also got paid the least, but also enjoyed it the most. Um, and so over the past several years, there's been a growing issue for farmers in particular that a lot of these new tractors and new farm equipment was coming with software and certain types of technology that was proprietary,
mhm.
and it would not allow farmers to work on their own equipment. And so it required them to have some of the like the John Deere reps or the New Hollands or the McDonald's, like these actual reps were the only ones allowed to touch the pieces of the equipment.
Okay.
Um, and so the farmers were saying, hey, like I literally can fix this myself and it would save me maybe like, $10,000 or but because they have proprietary software that they said that they were going to release to allow us
Mhm.
to like to plug into the computer system here,
Okay.
um, that they weren't releasing it and they said like, hey, you guys promised us we will be able to work on our equipment, and then these companies were saying, no, we don't want you to do it, we want you to use our service repair people instead. And the farmers were like, hey, this is like basically like you are controlling our ability to function. It's taking us time to be able to repair our equipment, kind of this whole ordeal that had been kind of getting worse and worse and worse over time. And
Right.
so there's a new law that passed that said, hey, if a farmer wants to work on his equipment legally, he should be allowed to work on his equipment.
So
And
this is falls under the right to repair, which has also been a fight that's been going on in the tech world as well. So people being
yes.
able to swap out their own batteries and not void their warranty.
Hmm.
There's pre-built machines like computers that have components in that you could build yourself. Those types
Like
of things.
Apple was a
Right.
thing, right, with that.
So yeah, this is good. Um,
Well, and
at
the
least
reason
on this
that
at least on the surface. I mean,
no,
I
this is
can't see why it would be bad, but
I was reading into this article, and because I know several farmers and they have talked to me about this issue on a couple occasions. This is an issue that is pretty important to them,
Right.
and so I feel more compassion for it, and this is something that they're going to be really happy about. Um, but it also ties into some of the issues lately with certain manufacturers of automobiles as well. As
Mm,
our automobiles become more technologically advanced, like Tesla, obviously, is kind
right.
of one of the leading examples of that. They have certain kind of proprietary software and certain proprietary mechanisms that they say, hey, you can't work on this. We have to work on it.
And
Otherwise,
I
it
wonder
voids
if
a
some of these
warranty.
tractors, that's some of the same reason, because a lot of them are heavily automated now, and
Yeah.
have some of those proprietary systems as well. I mean, honestly, a lot of them have had that stuff before cars did, before Tesla did, that tracked the fields and all that kind of stuff that was
Like the
going on.
GPS, too,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
some of them largely could kind of drive themselves because
Right.
you're spraying like expensive stuff on the ground, and doing things that just will cost you a ton more if you're not as efficient as possible. However you feel about big ag, that is why they do that. So
Well, but I was just happy to hear that there was just like, I get like warranties, like if you want to avoid a warranty, like that's a manufacturer's choice, that sort of thing. But to,
there are certain things that shouldn't though. Like they
but there's
shouldn't
certain
void a
things that
warranty.
shouldn't.
Yeah, there should be a
Exactly.
way to like check if it's been tampered in a certain way. So like if you get down, you can get down to the components of a build your own computer, but like if you take the cover off of hard drive, it actually says if you remove this cover, you're voiding the warranty because it's been gas sealed and had it pumped full of something else. If you undo it, then the drive no longer can operate in spec and all that kind of stuff. So I get
Yeah.
that. That kind of stuff is like, you can't.
But like one good example was is that the ooh, love that Dr. Zevia, rapping brother. Um One of my buddies, he was talking about they have a John Deere, a newer John Deere tractor, right?
Hmm.
And they were told before they bought it that they would be allowed to have one of their own diagnostic um, tools, basically, to plug into the computer to be able to see what the problem was and then be able to repair it. Because they're like, we've worked on mechanics, we know we're diesel mechanics, we know how to do this stuff.
Right.
And the company was saying, actually, no, we're not going to let you have that piece of diagnostic tool. We
Not
want to
cool,
be the ones
guys.
that do it. And so the farmers were like, guys, you're basically strong arming us on this equipment and not allowing us to do the repairs because you want to make more money.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a
Well, not only that,
sketchy issue.
it's a lot of those times, you and I know this from being there, you fix it out in the field when it and downtime costs money. So you're doing it as quick as possible. If you have to wait for a technician to come out or a licensed tech or whatever, it not only is going to cost you more money in labor or parts, it's also going to cost you more money in downtime. So it
Yeah,
just kind of sucks. There's some of those things that you just have to do on the fly. Um,
all the time.
I've crawled inside of combines to pull chains out that got wrapped up inside. Um,
Hmm.
that one didn't actually make it, so we tried, but it threw all the bearings. So
Yeah.
crazy.
So, anyways, that's encouraging. I'm happy for that freedom to be able to work on your own stuff at some point. That's
Yeah.
good.
So does that go into like effect immediately, or it said it was really vague on the rules so far, but it's supporting a right to repair, which is a
Right.
phrase
Yeah.
that's used and it's been fought in court for in other areas too. So
Yeah. I think that he's signing it, and then it has to. It's I think that he's signing it, and then he's also wanting there to be a legislation about it as well,
mm,
so there can't be overthrown by the next president. But
right.
um, so a interesting geopolitical thing that's taking place. Usually we talk about China, which I always have something to say about China just cuz I'm just so nervous about their their pressure plays on the world. But
You're just afraid they're gonna come get you and bring you over there.
well, as long as they give me a good tour first. Let me see all the pretty sights. Let me see
Maybe
all
they'll
that
have
stuff.
better air conditioning.
Yeah,
Maybe you'll get to build
maybe
iPhones.
actually interesting thing about air conditioning in China, they have the largest landmass of new forests of anywhere in the world right now. they've been going really heavy on planting trees because they've been trying to counteract all the smog and certain pollution factors that they're having to deal with.
Yeah, in some
But
areas, but then in other areas they're just dumping it into man-made lakes while they're making money hand over fist,
it's
providing for our electric motors and renewable energy that's
they're trying
renewable.
to counteract a lot of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, but someone that's following suit, and this is actually interesting because China. Do you recall China used to have the two children law? Remember,
Mm-hmm.
like it was like
It was one for a while.
right, right. It was population control, right? In China,
Yeah.
essentially, like they were saying, like was it actually one?
Was one for a long time.
It was one. Okay, for
But
anybody
see,
out
but
there,
then they had a negative. I believe that they ended up going negative, and there's never. I don't believe there's ever been a country in the world that has come back from a negative population gain. Like they've
oh
just
really?
dwindled out,
Well,
and yeah,
wait.
like
You're saying no
I,
country's ever come
I
back from a
I
negative
don't
population
believe, at
growth?
least what I heard, and I don't have any proof for this, but what I've heard is like as far as like population economics go, if that's even a term, but
Yeah.
the numbers of people, right? If you go negative in how your population is growing to a
Hmm.
certain point, no, I've what I've heard is that no nation has come back from that. Like they've died out because you just it's hard to like regain.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that makes me a little bit
Oh, here we go. We had a comment.
curious.
So, uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'll
Rachel
throw.
Pierce said it was one kid when you lived in the city, and you could have more if you lived rural. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, the
Oh,
someone that's
what is she saying
following
about the plants thing? It's not
suit,
working fast enough. They're already hand pollinating certain plants. Oh, in China, making comment to that.
not working fast enough. The hand pollinating. So I think she's saying this not compensating for the smog fast enough or the pollution.
Right.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
she's alluding to. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was one
Um.
kid when you lived in the city. We saw this, and you like said yes, but so everyone that's not watching and hearing now later, it is one kid when you lived in the city. You could have more if you lived rural. Huh, that's good. Yeah, I
Makes
do
sense.
remember that, but not living in China, I don't know the details. Um, oh, they don't have enough bees. All their bees are dying from the pollution. That's the bad
They got them
news.
killer bees. Was that China that had killer bees? No, that was Japan that had the
Yeah,
killer
those
bees.
killer murder hornets or whatever it
Yeah,
was. Like,
the giant hornets. Oh, those things
gosh,
are
my
terrible.
kids saw a story on that and they didn't want to go outside for a very long time.
Dude, 2020. Oh my God, everything.
Gosh.
It had everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Actually,
well,
no, our ice came in 2021, didn't it?
no.
It didn't. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it did.
Yeah. We had fire and ice. Fires
Fire
was
was in
2020.
2020. Yeah. But then on that note though, Jordan, I'm pretty sure the U.S. is in a population decline right now as
It's
well.
a certain number. It's not just a decline. It's a certain birth rate number that if you hit it, it's like a negative. I don't remember how they work. It's a
Uh,
weird ratio. It's kind of like like the R naught ratio for
yeah.
contracting
Hmm.
disease is kind of confusing.
Oh,
It's I mean it isn't for everyone, but like it's a funny ratio number. It's one of those, and if they go past a certain ratio, like no people has come
gotcha.
back from it.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
it's
but the U.S. has been in a steady annual population growth decline. I was looking at this thing I can pull up for you guys, but anyways, all that to be said,
yeah.
India is following suit now
Oh great.
in
Oh good.
population control, and it's going before their parliament, and it's requesting that there's population control through a law that says you are to limit your children to having two children per household. Um,
What if another
and
house?
yeah, what if you own multiple homes? Is this like a
What if you live in
situation
Bollywood? You've got
here?
a few homes, like
That's hilarious.
you're
You
just
just you have to keep your kids in those houses, so like you have to visit them
that's not bad.
intermittently, right?
You just put a nanny in there, and yeah, you can have
Yeah,
a bunch of different kids and just bounce between them. I mean, why
right.
not?
Yeah, totally would make things easy. But I
Totally,
mean,
totally legit.
here's the thing. Um, I mean, obviously, I think we've seen in the past this form of population control policy hasn't had a lot of net positive outcomes, at least in my impression. Maybe it did stem some of the population control issues that China had at one point,
Hmm.
possibly. Um, but it does make me a little bit concerned for um, like the unnecessary abortions of gender, because like if a like in China, right, it was all like
Yes.
all we want is men, right?
Right.
For some reason, and so they were just murdering, all these infant females, instead, because they wanted to. If they only could have two, you wanted to have the right to. Um,
Which
so
ended up
I
causing some weird issues. Like you,
yeah, right. Like you couldn't get married because there was no women.
right. But I mean, it caused weird issues in that. I did you watch? There was a great interview that Jordan Peterson did with a woman who escaped as a child from North Korea, and she escaped into slavery, well, into like sex slavery, and it was because all these men didn't have women. It was like a generated industry because there weren't enough women for the men. And she escaped slavery to more
Oh
slavery, and then
wow.
eventually, after a while, made it to the U.S. If you haven't seen it, it will floor you. My wife tried to get me to watch it
Mm.
for a long time, and I finally did, and I was like, "This is insane." If you want to see like a picture into what's going on there, it's wild.
Yeah, it just makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know if eugenics is the right word for it, but it makes me nervous that there's a form of that type of government
Yeah,
control with
I have an
kids. And yeah.
I have an issue when anyone says they're like, whatever your view on climate change is or whatever. And we were having like a little bit of a conversation about renewable energy and my thoughts on it before we went live. But I don't like it when people say like population control is the answer. It's like, well, then what's the purpose of like us as humanity like living here? Like if you're gonna say like if the Earth is to sustain basically the only sentient life that's here is humans, we can live cleaner. I have no problem with that. Like I'm not like this like conservative minded person that doesn't think that we shouldn't look for better ways to do things and look better and be better on the planet. But I don't think that a great message to go around pushing is that we need less people, because that just means people have you devalue human life. And
Now
when
that
anyone
that
says
makes
that, it's
sense.
like, hey, how okay, if we could live clean, we totally could. And we have all these abilities to make renewable energy, but we're doing a really bad job at it right now because we're just
Hmm.
letting China build it all. And they're just, like you said, they're building all these trees. Well, at the same time, they're the only rare earth metal people that are mining that and separating it. And they're just dumping hazardous and radioactive material into a
They're
man
doing the
made lake.
majority of it.
And
Yeah.
no, they're doing all of the neocadmium in the world.
In the world? Are
That's
you
where we
sure?
get it.
I thought there
Yes.
was some in Africa.
Mm-mm. Not that I'm aware of, because
I'll have to double check
they
that.
could shut down their plant, and it had an effect on the price. They would say it's for maintenance, and
Oh yeah.
there's no one
Well, I
doing
mean,
anything.
yeah.
And then these people they just live in this town around this giant lake of black goo, and that's where they say our renew. That's where we need it for our motors, we need it for our batteries, and we need it for our solar power. Like all these things that are supposed to be, and I think those are better options if we do it right, but we're not, and it makes it worse. And I wish that we would just be honest about it, because I think we should
So
clean up how we do things. I just don't think the answer is to sugarcoat it and make it seem like we're
yeah.
doing something when we're not.
So it is actually produced in other places. They're saying that it's produced in China, Japan, Korea, Mexico. The United
Then
States actually produces a small amount as well.
then maybe they were saying like they produce like
A majority.
almost all of it, yeah.
I'm
And
sure they
maybe
produce a lot of
it,
it.
and it was like this. Maybe they've started doing it, and that's good. I would push for that, but
Yeah.
maybe at the time that they did this and the guy was testing, because he did like testing on like where they were, because it was just a pipe out the back of the factory, just like bloop, just shoving it into the water. And they did testing on it. It was like
Oop.
4 times the amount of radiation that it should be, and it was all these rare earth metals that they were doing.
Oh, well, their government doesn't have the same regulation, right?
No, I know, but that's the thing, is like if that's where we're getting it, we're not making renewable energy yet. We have the technology for it for sure, but we're destroying things more than just like, I mean, it would take, like, he did the math, and I don't remember what it was. It was like you'd have to you it was like an 80-year break even on an electric car,
I think
because
that there is a starting point for production, and we're in the infantile state of learning like, is there a market for it? I think we're starting to prove there's a market for it. And so as the market grows, so will the production, and I think also the regulation of
I'm
production
fine
too.
with that, but let's not call it that yet. Then let's not call it renewable energy. Let's be honest. I guess I would push for honesty in everything, just like what I was talking about with like vaccines. Make them honest. Make them open source. Make this open source. Be honest with people. It's not clean yet, but we could make it clean.
Yeah, I think it's
And
getting
then,
cleaner.
yeah.
I think it is.
And I
I
was
do.
saying like I don't think it was you. I was talking to someone else. Like the first person that figures out how to mine that stuff cleanly and locally where they're at is going. That's the next Bill Gates.
I wager
Like
Tesla will. I think they will.
I think that they will, and I think
I
that's
think they
kind of
will.
why he's been made out to be an enemy because we have a lot of people who want to continue to deal business with China. And,
Hmm.
regardless
Yeah.
of how you feel about energy, all that kind of stuff, we shouldn't be funding this country that's like, what was the article I sent you this week? They're on the verge of trying to like, it looks like they're building nuclear subs and missiles to like basically threaten and take over Taiwan. That Hong Kong was just a testing ground. Where does it
And
stop? We've
telling
it's
telling
we've
Australia
seen
they're going to be their enemies
yeah, we've
if they make them
seen
their
we've
enemies.
seen countries do this before and it didn't end well. That they just started
Yeah.
taking over these different territories, right? So,
Dude,
I mean,
I know I say this every podcast, but China is the number one concern I have right now in the world. Their policies.
this is
Also,
an interesting thing that Luke just said. I don't know if you saw that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Hydrogen fuel cells got dropped too early once Tesla took
Hmm.
off. Honda had some strong prototypes. Yeah, I would agree. It's and another thing that hydrogen has for it, has going for it, is it's easy to. It's a faster fueling solution too, for uh, for
Well,
getting
so
charged back up.
here's the thing with hydrogen. It doesn't have to be a completely only hydrogen vehicle. It can be a hydrogen EV vehicle,
Right.
right?
Yeah, we were
And this
talking
is
about this
something.
the other day. It's
Yeah,
like
we've
you
talked
could
about
have a
this.
generator in it, because the stronger motors, realistically, right now, the strongest and fastest motors we have are electric motors.
Instant torque, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something actually. My This is funny. I'm glad Luke brought this up. My my dad has been the biggest proponent of hydrogen vehicles. Like every time we talk about new technology when it comes to um, your traditional combustion engines, he always is a proponent for
Ice,
hydrogen.
ice engines.
Yeah, ice. And we could have had a booming industry of hydrogen for the past probably 50 years, 60 years at least,
Yeah.
like we could have had a booming industry of hydrogen, but we have to get over a lot of our uh, financial, I don't know,
Ties.
overlords of, your typical
Well,
oil,
and that's really what it comes
barons.
down to. I mean, there's like if you want to talk about like, because we'll talk about like John McAfee here in a minute, right? If you want to talk about
Yes.
people who have been, what did his tattoo say? He had a tattoo on his arm that said, um, oh, what was
Yeah,
it?
what was it? I'll look it up. I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's basically like they killed me. And there's tons of rumors around people with these different
Whacked,
alternative
whacked,
whacked. Yeah, so it was like
whacked on
it
his
was
arm.
whacked on his arm, and he was saying like, I'm not gonna do it. If I die, I'm not the one that did it. Anyway, I won't go into that quite yet. But there's so many
Well,
there's so many rumors of people around this automobile industry in and of itself that have just disappeared or died. I have people that I know personally that knew people that just all of a sudden died that had prototypes to things that were way ahead of their time that involved hydrogen and some other solutions. I've
so
heard of people going and like seeing like there was an H2 that someone converted to it was a biodiesel engine that charged a battery at hyper speed, and it converted it electric motors and everything with batteries fuel cells that it could recharge, and the engine would kick on when it needed to recharge the batteries and charge it up for like 15 minutes and then keep going.
Well, one thing I would say about EVs, something that actually is out there on the world right now, that's not just EV, but it's hydrogen as well. The Toyota
This is interesting.
Miri. Hold on a
With
second.
Luke.
The Toyota Miri or Mirai.
Yeah.
That actually is something that is a hydrogen vehicle out there on the market right now, and it's actually came out in like December of last year. So Toyota has been pushing still for the hydrogen market. It's
Yeah.
combined with EV though as well. So I'm hoping that we get that, keep that, keep that momentum
I
there.
think that's the best option. Garrett brought up a good
Yeah.
point. would the hydrogen Honda's hydrogen cells be as bad as their battery cells they've created? Yeah, they didn't have a great run when it came to their
Mm,
first EVs. That's a super good point. Um,
that's a good point,
also,
Garrett.
Toyota, a subject we have talked about, and you guys can go back and listen to it, or you can just look up the bit flip. Toyota had a big old run-in with their Prius and stuff, flipping bits because it was like one of the first drive-by-wire cars, and there was quite a few deaths related to that with nanoparticles going through and just making it so you couldn't stop. Um, and
Which is crazy.
there's some really sad stories out there, but it's happened. It's affected voting machines in the past, which has been proven. Wasn't this last election? I'm not going to go into that, but like, um, it happens in planes all the time. There's like triple redundancy on some airplanes now because of it. So, yeah, there's a lot of other complications that come along with these types of systems. So,
And the thing with there is a kind of a nice thought to like even though it's extremely high tech, there's a
mhm.
degree of simplicity to just a pure EV vehicle because you don't have any of the extra mechanical components like your transmission fluids, you don't
There,
have your oil, you don't have a lot of those certain things that require maintenance.
there is, but I've never seen a post-apocalyptic movie where they didn't have just like movies that ran on like pig poop or something else because there's some simplicity to being able to fix things in a world that's been destroyed. So, I don't know.
Who knows what's going to work post-apocalyptic? I know it's
I
like
know exactly. I
I don't know. I
guarantee
guess my
you
bicycle, my
all those
bicycle will work.
all those old Fords and like old Chevy pickups and stuff like
I got one.
those diesel what was it, the Blazers from the farm, those things will be kicking
Oh my
for another
gosh.
century or two. um
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
As
don't
long
know
as you
where
got
they
a
found
good
that
old
many
carburetor.
diesel Blazers. I have no idea where they found this, but
They probably paid like a premium for them because they were just
dude, and they were
they had
so
buckets
slow.
of them.
You'd hit the gas and it was like a 7-second warm up to
It
get
was
moving.
fascinating the degree of roll those vehicles had. You turn the wheel like half of an entire turn, and you would just and
Yes.
it barely would move, and you would just be
But
like
yet
it's
they
like
would
driving a
drive
boat
those things through field fires and they would be fine. Like they would be lit on fire,
all the time.
burning all over the place, tires popping around them, and they're fine. Like, you
Oh
know,
man, the good old days. The good old
yeah.
days. The good
Yeah.
old days.
They don't make cars to last like that anymore.
Um, so last topic I got that I wanted to bring up here. Kind of exciting. This is something that I think you and I had talked about this in the past, Jordan, maybe a couple of years ago, as far as supplements go.
Hmm.
Um, and the there's been a recent release that the government has been increasing its study of a certain type of supplement because they are finding correlations with it delaying your potential certain DNA aging factors. Um,
Not sure how I
so
feel about this one.
it's interesting. It's interesting because they're investing quite a bit of money into the study because they've done a couple different trials now. Um, and so basically, it's a study of a certain type of uh, fuel. Essentially, it's called NAD,
Hmm.
um, and that helps with in your mitochondrial cells. There's a certain
Right.
type of production of ATP, which is a type of uh, chemical compound that allows for energy of those cells. But NAD acts to essentially not completely like repair the cells, but it gives them additional energy and helps maintain the health of the cells to a degree.
There's people that have been taking
Um,
NAD for a while. Like, there's a lot of biohackers
right,
out there that have been taking that for a while.
right. But it's interesting that the
I thought
government
NAD was
has.
better intravenous though. Like it wasn't absorbed well.
I
Or
think
is that
that they
something
found a
else?
way of. Well, with this in particular, they've found a way of. It's kind of like you have micro absorbable. Like basically,
Hmm.
they are able to produce it to micro scale where it's small enough of a solvent where your body's able to process it.
Right.
But they're seeing that it's been helping with certain type of inflammatory conditions and enough to the point where they're
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, we actually want to give this to our
If it's NAD, I'm all
service
for it
members."
because that's actually been tested by a crap load of people that I've listened to
Hmm.
that have been
Yeah,
taking it for years.
yeah, it's
Um,
NAD. They're really like pushing it pretty heavy right now.
it's
They
interesting that
spent
they can use supplements and say they work for things like that, but when a doctor tries to say that take a supplement instead of a pill,
Well, here's why. Because this will have government funded
Oh, I
studies,
know.
right? There's so many pills out
No,
there that
but
have
other
no
places
studies.
would do them. They just know that there's no money in it because they won't let
Yeah,
them do it.
yeah. The
Yeah.
money factor is a
I'm
big
just,
one.
yeah, I'm right. That's it's it, the money factor. That's where
There's
it
money
is.
factor for sure, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as it benefits
Okay.
them monetarily, they're okay with it. Yeah.
So
Totally.
I am
Totally.
excited to go into. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
I'm
I
sad that
we
this happened,
we
but I'm
talked a
excited to
little
talk
bit.
about this.
The China one we already kind of covered. That was the whole Taiwan thing. That was one of the articles that I had, but it was covered kind of cross referenced in what we were talking about with you. So this John McAfee thing, I don't know, but beyond like he created McAfee antivirus or McAfee or whatever you want to call it. He was known for shilling coins in 2017. So people that don't know, like cryptocurrency was like it's been around since about 2013, probably a hair before that, but it wasn't really like well, I wouldn't say it was even mainstream. Short like before like 2016 that much. There was unless you were heavily nerding out. But he was doing these things. They would have these things called initial coin offerings or ICOs, similar to IPOs, except they weren't controlled by the SEC. They weren't controlled by any of these exchanges, and and I don't think this was right. I remember when it was happening, and he would do these like pump and dumps. If people don't know, like that's when people like push something in the stock market that's like definite manipulation. It pumps up, the big guys sell, and then the little guys get stuck with these like expensive securities or stocks or whatever that they're never going to dump for that price ever again. So they just lost their money. He would make these deals because he had a giant Twitter following at the time and would promote these coins, but would do deals with them and take like 20% of the initial coins that they were going to offer for these different ones. There wasn't any that I really recognized, except for one that they allegedly said he had bribed and said, if you don't give me $1.1 million in Ethereum at the time, which would be a lot more than that now, um,
Hmm.
that he was going to help to tank their coin. And that coin was XVG or Verge. It's a privacy coin. It's still around. I don't know that they paid him at all. I know that the coin did really well and then didn't. So maybe they didn't, and he
Yeah.
negatively impacted them. But there were a lot of people that said that they were terrified of him saying negative things about their offerings as well. And you can believe it. So there's people that hate cryptocurrency, and there's some people that are that's all they believe in. And I think there's somewhere in the middle. I think they do have a utility. I think that I truly believe that someday the world will operate in a blockchain type way because it builds trust in a system that has very little trust. Um, but
Decentralized. Yeah.
that's where that's kind of where he then got blamed by the SEC and was like, I'm out. Named a CEO and bailed and lived on a yacht in the Bahamas or something. He apparently was running like he was going to try to run for president from the
He
Bahamas.
did. Well, he
Um,
tried to run for president. Did you know that?
right.
He did have a
Yeah, but it wasn't
candidacy.
much. It was just like, anyway. So he did all that. He was kind of a weird dude. But he did. I mean, a lot of those guys are. I would never consider Elon Musk normal or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or any of these big guys. Like Bezos, probably one of the more normal of them all, but still not that normal. Um,
Sorry, he ran in 2016 under the Libertarian Party.
okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that. But it was like, you know, didn't really go anywhere. Plus, he was in a boat off the coast and allegedly going to be charged. So he's charged with like, I think it was like 23, or was it 23 counts? Or it was 23 million dollars in tax evasion is what it was, and there was like nine or 10 accounts or 10 counts that he was being charged on. He had seven of them had been dropped, and up until this,
Hmm.
he hadn't been arrested. He got arrested just recently in Spain, and then he had made some statements, and I went and listened to, and I'll have to find it and put a link in there. I don't have it in our notes now, but there was an interview that I watched with his lawyer that he had retained to start to build his case because he was going to be extradited back to the United States. Spain was still working on that stuff, and then all of a sudden, he turned up dead. And they said afterwards, I was reading about when his wife like went to collect his things and all that. Then she said they conveniently said, "Oh, we also after she'd gotten his things, we found this suicide note in his pocket." And he had told everyone. I'm never going to. And like we'd made mention of the tattoo that he had that said whacked.
Mm-hmm.
He had said, I have a kill switch. Essentially, if I do get killed, there will be information that comes out about the government. And this interview I watched, the guy asked him about that. He said, what do you think? And he goes, I can't go into detail because he's still like working on some of this stuff. I can't go into detail, but I have no reason to believe that he's lying. Um, so it's pretty wild. But
Well, and
I will say,
he sent
sorry,
this
go ahead.
tweet. Let me just say it real quick. He sent a tweet before he was suicided, and um, he said, getting subtle messages from the United States officials saying, in effect, and he says, "quote, we're coming for you, McAfee. We're gonna kill yourself. We're gonna kill yourself." End quote. And then he said, "I got a tattoo just in case. If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked. Check my right arm." And
Yeah.
that's where. So he tweeted
Well,
like, "Guys, please, I'm not gonna kill myself."
so some of the things that I mean, obviously from what I just said, a lot of it surrounds cryptocurrencies. So these digital assets that he had, which I don't know like what some of them are worth. There were some other things that he had allegedly done that they had blamed him of. They said they had an email of him um, making threats and saying that these people owed him money and he was doing like some cash deals. And he basically responded to him and said, present that in court. I want to see the proof that I actually sent that email because I didn't. So he was pretty defensive, and if those things would come out, so I don't think that, and unless, I mean, maybe he's crazy, but if he's like pretty confident, like, oh, you don't have it, like, there's no way you can prove that I sent that because I didn't. It was fabricated, and we'll prove it in court. He was getting ready to win in court. Now, some of the things that he was going to go up against were he didn't believe that some of these digital assets should be taxed the same way that they are. Now, they're saying that some of the assets that he had that he was illegally dealing in securities. Now that's what the SEC is suing Ripple Labs over, which is over XRP. Those of you that don't know or don't care, you can go look it up. That's over whether or not they're security. It's never been determined. Like he was wanting them to determine and actually state where they stood on it, and then all of a sudden he turns up dead. Like that was going to be most of his case was, and so a lot of these guys that are big names in the cryptocurrency world believe that he was on the edge of the precipice of actually getting positive regulation for cryptocurrencies and for crypto assets that would bring some clarity and some benefit to those that are invested in, and it wouldn't benefit a lot of countries.
And the
um,
degree, this is what's strange to me. Like, the degree of trading and insider trading or whatnot, whether you want to say it's like tax evasion,
mhm.
the amount of money that wasn't really enough for it to incentivize the US to kill him, right?
Right.
So there, that kind of further bolsters the fact that this is this is outside of just tax evasion kind of
Yeah,
situation,
I
right?
think it was to make an example. And then at the same time, when he was bringing that kind of a case, if he was going to change the face of what it is, because right now it's taxed similar to like a stock. If you don't hold it for a year, then the capital gains on it. Like it's super duper confusing. Um, and I think there should be some regulation around it. And I don't think it's the same thing as like a stock holding. Some of them may be, some of them are not. But we got these countries now that are saying, hey, this is a currency now. Um, El Salvador. There's a couple
A
others that
fee,
are
like a
that are
fiat
joining in that are
would be
that.
the
Well, it's not a fiat. They're saying these cryptocurrencies are a currency and should be accepted at businesses. They're telling businesses they have to accept these. Now, some of that's bad, and without going into too much detail, you don't necessarily want a
well,
government to create.
it kind of would be considered like it's not a government created, but it's not backed by a commodity such as gold. So like that's what a fiat is, not backed by a commodity, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
but
kind of
this
a
but
fiat.
this is backed by, it's kind of and it kind of isn't, because it's backed by the network. And so then you look at like, oh, well, what would these countries have to do in order to have them? Well, a lot of people, like, so we talked about Elon Musk saying that crypto mining is bad, or specifically he was talking about Bitcoin. It's bad for the environment. It uses all this amount of energy. I got to thinking about that, and I was like, okay, if if Bitcoin, and I don't think this is going to happen, but say tomorrow all the banks closed and Bitcoin was it. We didn't have to have a bank. It was just Bitcoin. Okay? I don't think that's going to happen. It's pie in the sky, but it's just a thought experiment for a moment.
Yeah, it's great.
All of that energy that's being used throughout the world to secure that network. My question is that more than the energy to employ all the people that work at the banks, to have all the banks on every corner, running all their lights, all their computers, all their machines, all their systems? Is it less or more than what the banks have in their monetary system?
It's a good question. Also, not just the amount of production to like keep banks up and going, but like amount of energy it creates to create hard cash money, right?
Right. That's just the cash. I'm just talking about the digital side of things. Because if people don't believe
Right.
in Bitcoin,
There's
that's
more to the
totally fine.
digital
That's
side
your
of it
thing.
too.
But
Yeah.
there's way more of our currency in the digital side of things that's just floating around.
True.
So you already
Yeah.
do believe in digital currency. It's just it's a government coin,
And you already
if you
do
will.
believe in a currency that's not backed by any type of,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Because
commodity.
as Greg just said, our dollar is not backed by gold. It's not. Um,
Yep.
there are some coins that are backed by things. There's some holdings that are some stable things that are backed literally by like a hard commodity, and
By
that's yeah.
by demand. Basically
Hmm.
backed by demand.
Not by
you know.
demand. Some are actually backed. Some are backed by actual gold. Like the holdings that are in there is the value of gold.
Are you
So
speaking of bonds? Is that what you're talking about? Or what are you
no,
talking
I'm
about?
talking about like there are cryptocurrencies that
Oh,
have
cryptos. Okay.
physical backings to them, which is
Really? I
more
didn't
than
know
the
that.
yeah.
Which
There's
ones is
that's
there
more
really?
than can be said. And some of them, like there, people are talking about putting like stocks into cryptocurrencies, so that they're backed by the stock value.
Ooh, that's fascinating.
So yeah, think about that. Or NFTs are backed by the value of the art or the item that you have, right? So there are tokens that are backed by an
Oh, here
actual
we go. I got two
like
of them
hard
for you
code.
guys. So there's one called AABBG,
Hmm.
which is 100% gold backed
Hmm.
token. Um, so supported by a minimum of zero point 0.1 grams of gold uh, spot price, whatever that means. And then there's one called
That
AGX
means what the price of gold is at that time.
that's backed by silver.
Hmm.
And then there's another one called Venezuelan petrol, which is oil backed.
Right. Yeah.
That's
So they're
interesting.
actual commodities that are done. So here's what's interesting. So I was thinking about the whole Bitcoin thing. I think it's BS. There's a bunch of stuff. I'm not even going to go into it because people would just get bored and start dropping off, and they probably already are. But like, um, when Elon says that about these countries, doing Bitcoin, he's like, it's using too much energy. So the something that Bitcoin does is it. So we were talking about creating energy, right? It's like there's like coal and all those kind of energies that
Right.
definitely like burn fossil fuels and stuff. And we could all agree that's not as clean as we could be. But if we are making this goo and muck and all that kind of stuff in China, the other renewable energies, they can't really claim themselves to be clean either because they have an output as well. We just don't talk about it. We don't bring it up. We're not transparent about that. But if we were and we were incentivized to make clean energy, then we would. And there's all and even renewable energy, it fluctuates when you have it, and it's I think it's around like 30% of energy is just lost. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get used by the network, or the grid. And so in these countries that are either poorer or are switching to these things, people could be incentivized, countries could be incentivized to actually start to mine Bitcoin, which is just running the network. When people talk about mining, it makes it kind of confusing. Think about your credit card. Your
Verifying
money,
transactions.
your transaction gets verified, and they get a fee for transacting your money and your account to the vendor, right? That's what mining is. And so if they put that, and there's some other rewards and whatnot that go along with that, but that's the simplicity of the system. Now you want cheap energy, right, to run those miners because they take energy. You want to keep more of your Bitcoin than spend it on electricity. So you are incentivized to use renewable energies, cheaper energies, to run it on a system that 30% is being lost anyway. So it kind of makes sense that you would do that because at the same time you're putting liquidity into your own pocket to run it and you're providing trust to the trust system. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought to
It's
think about.
interesting.
I don't know if you follow that or if everyone else is just like, "Whoa, I'm lost." Like, but it's just it's a different way of thinking about a monetary value that I think I hadn't given much thought to until I kind of sat down and thought about it after we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I was like, you know what? How much energy do the banks use? Like, how much energy we use for our current monetary system? How do
Mm-hmm.
we, if we're talking about improving how our energy is made, why don't we talk about improving how our energy is used?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. That's a great point. How our energy is used. Yeah, and a lot of that, again, I mean, there's multiple spokes to that, but even
Right.
like infrastructure, certain
Mm-hmm.
upgrades to our infrastructure would have a big benefit to how our energy is used as well,
Right.
and waste, that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
especially
But
because you'd be incentivizing people to try to either run solar or something on their own that's offsetting what they're using off the grid, so it puts less draw on the grid, things like that.
right,
There's a
right.
lot of people that run these miners. It's like it's over 70% of people that are running cryptocurrency machines that run the networks are on renewable energy already. It's a
70,
high amount.
70%.
Yeah,
Wow,
that's
that's
it's
that's
estimated, but
shockingly high.
like it's
Well, there
like
was something really
because they're
cool, like in
incentivized to have cheaper power.
right.
They're
It saves them money.
yeah.
Greenland, was it Greenland? There was a huge crypto factory there, and it's all running off of geothermal. I was like,
Oh
that's pretty
really? Yeah.
cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
there was one that was I don't know if it was there or somewhere is going to be run. I think it might be Venezuela, run off volcanoes.
Yeah, this was like it was heat coming up from like geysers
Yeah,
or
well
something
that'd be
like that.
volcanic. Yeah,
Yeah,
same
but
idea. But like it
interesting.
sounds insane. It sounds like something out of a movie or something. It was like if that's how you create energy and you're
Why not?
incentivizing to someone to create a
Yeah,
renewable energy that's not like burning something up and it's just there readily available.
sounds amazing.
Why not let them use some of it to secure your monetary network?
Sounds amazing. All right, you want to do a TIL showers?
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. All right. I have
Go.
two
Just go. You have the
TILs.
same
Okay.
amount as me.
All right. Perfect. Today I learned that in East Africa, movies are often watched with a VJ or video joker who provides live narration over the movie for translation, contextualization, and comedy purposes. So you have they often have a commentator during watching movies. I never knew
Oh,
that. That's
I
hilarious.
learned that today too. That was one of mine, and it's
Oh, that was one of yours too.
amazing. I was immediately thinking, I was like, man, I'm like, I feel like we could just do this, like just right now. Like
It'd be so
people
fun.
people get mad. They shut up, stop talking. I'm trying
Yeah.
to watch the
Shut up.
movie. It's not for here. Like, no, you came. We're gonna
Very
talk
true.
about the movie.
We listen to
Oh,
what our thoughts are.
yes. Okay, I'm glad you went first because I don't think you have the second one. Today I learned Jimmy Carter is the longest lived president, the longest retired president, the first president to live 40 years after their inauguration, and the first to reach the age of 95.
That's incredible, and it's insane to think that. But it's also hilarious because I had the exact same TI.
We had the same
Wavelengths, man.
too.
Wavelengths.
I tried to pick ones that weren't for you too. Like, that's so funny.
Wavelengths, buddy.
That's
Wavelengths.
great.
That just shows
Great.
that we both are like, okay, we both find this fascinating. That's hilarious.
Yep.
All right, shower thoughts. I'll go first.
Go.
Casually dipping chicken in egg has to be one of the most savage things humans have ever done. Like
I,
basically,
okay.
I'm gonna dip you in your baby's,
So
grinded up makings.
yes, but also something we do is dip the steak and stuff into like the bloody juices.
Yeah, yeah. It's savage, savage, man.
And when you make like what is it, steak the fingers, the steak fingers or whatever, you do egg on
Oh,
those. So
fajitas.
you're dipping a cow in the fetuses of a
Oh yeah.
chicken. Yeah,
Right, right. Yeah, kind of crazy. All right,
but
hit me.
not their own babies. That would be weird. Yeah. Okay. The part of the ugly duckling that no one ever mentions is that after a lifetime of bullying, the duckling grows into a swan, the undisputed biggest asshole of the bird kingdom.
Because of his traumatized childhood, that's why.
Greg says, when we dip the steak in juices, it's not the blood, it's the protein. There's a difference. There's some blood in there.
I'm sure there's some blood in
I
there.
get you, but I'm sure there's some blood in there too.
Yeah, but still, it's still part of
Especially
another
because it's
creature.
best rare. Everyone
Mm,
knows that.
you're making me hungry right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs was technically the highest ratio of killing birds to one stone in Earth's history. Definitely
So
knocked
far.
that out of the park.
So far.
So far. So far. Yeah, so far.
Well, someone got rid of all the dodo birds.
Yeah, but every dinosaur was, or not every dinosaur, but a lot of dinosaurs were associated with as a bird,
Right.
right?
That's true. It's true. Is it a stone or a rock? Or a boulder?
Maybe a little bit of both. Or ice cube.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It could be an ice cube. That's why we don't see any of it around.
Mm.
The movie Free Willy is about freeing a captive orca while using a captive orca to play the orca they're trying to free from captivity.
That's horrible. That's like making a movie about slave labor and using real slaves to act
Yeah,
as
it
slaves.
is. It's fully like that.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, Mount Everest is both the highest cemetery and trash can on the planet.
True.
Makes you think.
That's so wild to think. It's
Yeah.
so wild to think that it has grown, it grows up, but it literally can't because of our gravitational pull. It's limited by how tall it can be.
Isn't that cool?
It's
That's
weird.
really cool.
It's also weird that it's only 11 miles from that tip to the bottom of the ocean.
Fascinating. That's one of my favorite
Yeah.
statistics.
And then if you took the Earth and shrunk it down to a cue ball, it'd be smoother than any cue ball you've ever played with.
That's how big
That's
the
how
Earth
big
is.
our planet is.
We
That's
got a
weird.
big ball, guy. We got
Yeah.
big
Which makes
ball.
me wonder. I mean, it's a good question. How much climate change is not us, and how much can we actually move the needle if it's that big? I don't know. I don't know the
I
answer.
don't know. I
It's
don't
my
know. Makes you
question.
think.
I
Makes
have
you
a ton
wonder.
of questions I don't know the answers to. Superman probably wouldn't be incredibly ripped because there isn't really that much that could give him a good workout.
Yeah, fascinating. It would have to be like something extraterrestrial,
Like
right?
he
Comets
just baint like
or
yeah, he bench presses planets and but then
yeah,
there's no gravity. You need gravity to force.
for
Maybe
muscles.
crushes planets.
Crushes planets. Yes, that's a good one. Punches them. Yep, there you go. That's what it is. Nailed it.
Yep.
Spent a lot of time in the Oort belt.
Yep.
Okay. Caregiver and caretaker are synonyms, despite giver and taker being antonyms. For
It's true.
my English lovers out there, it's kind of a fun little crazy thought. Caregiver and caretaker are synonyms, but giver and taker are antonyms. It's weird how you can make that work. So just
Yes.
needed to say that.
Students going to law school are seen as bright and upstanding citizens, but lawyers are often ridiculed by society and considered to be evil.
100% agree. But I would often associate law students with lawyers
I would too.
because I know
Actually,
eventually they're going to become
I would actually
blood sucking.
I guess that I would say I associate a lot of students these days with people who are just kind of full of themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that for sure. Well, it's just yeah, it's a whole another
Except at
topic we can
community
go in.
college, nobody takes himself seriously there.
Oh man. Well,
It
and a lot of that I think has to do with the cost. I
it
think
also
if
has to do with the fact that you're 40 years different age than the person next to you.
right, yeah, that's a big factor, which I think actually is really healthy. I like that.
Yeah.
But okay, my last shower thought.
Okay.
Doing your own research oftentimes is actually doing research of other people's research.
To an extent.
A lot of times.
I would say a more accurate statement would be doing your own research is more like a meta-analysis than anything.
Which is research of other people's research.
right. But you're kind of
Yeah.
but you're taking you're kind of you're weighing whether or not the data is good or not
Yeah.
to
Yeah, that's the definition of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're the actual scientist or the actual one collecting the data, a lot of times
I'd
you
say even
are
some of them
researching other
probably
people's research.
do a meta-analysis if someone else has done that in their field too, just to add to what they're doing.
or to
I don't know.
speed
We
things
we
up.
all should
Yeah.
learn from each other and call each other out for being losers too.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I watched a video about a guy doing that today, and he's like, "This guy's. I'm not attacking him or anything. I never want to attack people. I want to attack ideas." And he was like the most gracious. Like, I disagree with this guy and want to invite him to talk to me about this problem.
Well, that's good.
It was interesting. Yeah.
I like
Okay.
that.
Last shot of that. You could hear 1,000 jokes and not remember any of them when you wanted to retell one, but remember every single one when you heard them told again.
So true. Yeah. Yeah.
Be like, oh, I know the punchline of this one. Probably more than 1,000.
It's also interesting how quick you are to remember when someone else tells you a story you've already heard.
Yeah.
Right?
Although I would say, like, I have a lot of experience in life stories, and I can't just sit and like tell you all of them. But if you
Yeah, but
like
like
jog my
it's
memory,
for some reason it's really quick. It's really easy for me to remember a story that someone else has already told me, but it's not but it's not as easy for me to remember if I've told somebody a story already,
true.
which is
That is true.
kind of an interesting
Well,
dichotomy
it's
there.
because you probably told that story 30 times to different people, and you're like, I don't know if this was one of them. Because you didn't
Yeah,
just tell that story once. If you'd only told that story once ever, you'd probably know you told the story.
too many stories. Too many stories.
Too
Too many
many
stories.
stories. Too many stories, guys.
Well, guys, that's all we got for episode 106. We're happy to be back in life in conversations with y'all. And the world's always changing. We're here to discuss it and change it with you.
Be like, ooh, what's going on, boys?
What's going on, boys and girls? All right. Well, guys,
All
have
right.
a safe week. Enjoy your cooler temperatures, hopefully. Hopefully it's cooler where you're at than
Cooler
what
than
we
like
have been.
117, 115, somewhere in there.
Mm-mm,
Toronto
mm-mm.
is 121 in spots.
No mas.
Bananas,
No mas y
guys.
mas. All right, guys.
No more.
Peace out. Have a great week.
See ya.
Talk to you soon.